Each local and state league is allocated a certain number of delegates based on their membership size. Our 5 delegates were myself, Donna Dardaris, Ann Kril, Monica Seebode, I hope I said that right, and Barbara Thomas. We attended the online plenary sessions where delegates adopted the budget, including the per member payment, adopted the National League program that I was referring to earlier, and heard from inspiring leaders and heard about new ideas. So I think now, Monica, if you could go to the shared screen. So this is, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see this is the list of all the different sessions. So each of us attended 4 to 7 different info sessions or caucuses online. Now, caucuses are sessions that introduce delegates to items on which they may need to vote. As you can see, there was a wide variety of info sessions, and this was compiled after convention. So there's all these recordings of all these different sessions, which is one of the perks of having done this convention online. We have all these resources that everyone can access. So we're going to get this link on our website. I don't know if it's there yet, but when we go back to not sharing the screen later, I did put the link to this in the chat if you want to copy and paste it. And encourage you to look at any recordings that are of topics of interest for you. Right. Yeah, there's the link right there if you want to copy and paste it. So later tonight, we will hear from Dr. Deborah Turner, the 20th president. Oops, I better start my video again. You can't even see me, can you? We will hear from Dr. Deborah Turner. She's the 20th president of the League of Women Voters of the United States. We will also report on the program that was passed by the delegates, which included 3 motions that were adopted to the program that were non-recommended items. We're going to highlight a couple of the info sessions that some of us attended. And along the way, we're going to share some of our thoughts on attending the convention. Time permitting, we're going to take some questions, but we were trying to aim for being done in like an hour. So next, what we want to do is share a portion of the inspirational address that was given by the League of Women Voters Executive Director, Virginia Case. All of us, the delegates, we talked about it afterward, and we really felt that this was one of the most inspirational moments at the National Convention. So we wanted to share a portion of it with you tonight. And so if you could, Monica, play that, and I'm going to mute.
We are also looking beyond 2020 and making plans for our full 2-year biennium. We've made great progress as an organization on the transformation roadmap, and in the next 2 years, we will build upon that work with a framework to advance our strategic focus. Now, this includes creating a more inclusive league community, building our organizational capacity at all levels, growing our advocacy and our activism, expanding voter access, ensuring people-powered fair maps, and continuing to advance our democracy through the campaign for making democracy work. Now, we've already laid the groundwork for much of this work, deepening our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and coming to terms with our own organization's history to tell our story authentically and honestly, which has also earned us respect from those whose ancestors were left behind during the fight for the 19th. We didn't walk away from our story or trying to create a different narrative. We told the truth. And in the next 2 years, we're going to take this work even further. We're going to ensure we are doing our work in a way that is welcoming of all people, which is going to require a lot of effort. And the national office is committed to strengthening leagues at all levels, building operational capacity, improving data and technology, and investing in all of you so that we can best tell the collective story of the league for future leaders when they're celebrating our 200th anniversary and they reflect on 2020. When we started this transformation journey, we didn't know that we would find ourselves preparing for the most partisan and contentious election of most of our lifetimes. But we were made for this challenge. Everything that we have done until now, it was just a down payment on our ability to stand in this moment, ready to finish the fight. And we will. We must stand in our power. We must speak up for what is right and just. Now, I know this is not going to be easy. For some, you will have to stand firm as people accuse you of being partisan when you know you are just standing in decades of league positions. And this, honestly, it's been a big pain point for our organization, confronting what it means to be nonpartisan when our core mission and beliefs are under attack. And unfortunately, most often from one side. There are some who say we can't even mention party names or that we should just stick to educating voters on the positions of both parties. And when it comes to certain things, it's easy. That's how we empower voters, by educating them on the issues. But our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. How are we defending democracy if we aren't standing up for it when it most matters? When democracy is attacked, we can't stay neutral. We must stand in our positions and advocate for what is right and just. We must stand in defense of the Constitution. I mean, after all, nonpartisan doesn't mean that we don't have positions or opinions. It doesn't mean that we can't call out bad behaviors of elected leaders or thank those who are our champions. And it doesn't mean we can't criticize bad policy. Being nonpartisan, it means that we are not beholden to any party or candidate. We don't endorse or support them, but we also don't attack them. We promote civil discourse, and we need to be respectful. But that doesn't mean that we can't disagree, as long as it is based on and rooted in our organization, positions, values, and beliefs. At least for me, that's what I believe it means to be nonpartisan. But here's what it comes down to. The matters we're working on shouldn't be partisan. For decades and decades, they weren't partisan. Over the years, the League's work has had its share of supporters and detractors from across all of the political spectrum. And it's only in recent years that the rollback of voting rights, the lies and the scare tactics, the so-called legislative solutions in search of a problem, that have the real world effect of restricting access to the ballot box, especially for poor people and Black, Indigenous communities. It's only in recent years that there's been a strictly partisan line drawn on these matters. Now, don't get me wrong, these tactics, they've existed for a long time. But now one side uses them for political advantage. Now, whether that's because they don't think they can win on their ideas, or they simply reject the idea of more people being able to vote, I can't tell you. But the League is doing what we've been doing for 100 years. So if one side is now pointing at us and saying our issues are partisan, it's because one side has walked away from decades of something that should always remain nonpartisan, making our democracy freer and more inclusive. Now, I will say, I know that there are some who are going to agree with me, and others simply won't. And that's okay. And that's why I'm looking forward to a healthy discussion about what being nonpartisan means in the upcoming biennium, because it's something we simply must define more clearly for our organization. Now, before I go, I also want to acknowledge that 2020, it's changed the way we talk about race in our country and in our organization. As the mother of 2 Black sons, I can't tell those of you who don't have Black children what it feels like to worry about your child being killed by police because of their skin color. My son was pulled over by police a few months ago, and he had guns drawn on him, and he was just picking up his girlfriend from work, but they decided that he looked suspicious. Now, I share this with you to say that I only have a glimpse into what it means to be Black in America because of my children. But I will never know what it's like to be in their skin. But I have a responsibility to ensure that I am doing everything in my power to fight for them and every other Black person and brown person in this country who has been dealing with the effects of institutional racism for 401 years. And in our organization, we've been on a journey to become more diverse, equitable, and inclusive. And that includes new ways of talking about racial injustice and anti-Blackness in America. And we will all need to find ways to dismantle systems of oppression that in some cases, many are just coming to realize exist. But I'm here because I believe we can do this. And I believe that you can do this. Our founders knew that true democracy derives from casting our votes and raising our voices. So we will walk into this moment in history on the right side of history with conviction and courage as a welcoming and inclusive league where all who want to sit at democracy's table feel welcome. I want to thank all of you for your confidence, your trust, and your support over the past 2 years. I want to thank the national staff for their tireless work and dedication to the League. I would also like to add that all of the staff are also League members, so many of them may be in your local leagues. But I especially want to thank the outgoing board who have set our organization on a path towards a future where I know we will continue to thrive and grow. I want to thank Chris Carson for her steadfast leadership and her ability to navigate the seas of change, even during the most ferocious of storms. And last, I want to welcome Dr. Deborah Turner and our incoming board as they steer us into the next century, and who I trust will do so with determination, bravery, and lots of gumption. I want to thank you all so much. I look forward to the rest of the convention, and I look forward to hearing from all of you in the upcoming biennium and working.
Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that and I hope you could hear all of it. Was it clear? You can hear it and see it? Wonderful. She references Dr. Deborah Turner, who did speak later in the convention, and we will show you a portion of that video as well later in this evening's meetup. I'm Monica Seebode, and I got to have the honor of attending this year's convention. It was my very first. And so, unlike the rest of my co-delegates, I didn't know what I was missing in not getting to meet everyone face to face. I was very excited and honored to be part of this event. And honestly, a little bit feeling like a fish out of water. Everybody's very impressive in this organization as a whole. And it was the one thing I think I missed in it being a virtual event was the chance to meet people face to face and have conversations with them, which is something I look forward to doing someday in the future. Tonight, I'm going to share with you what I learned at the Cybersecurity and Privacy Concurrence session. That was one of several sessions I attended during the convention. This particular session was led by the League of Women Voters of Oregon in partnership with other leagues. They've produced informative studies on the issue of privacy and cybersecurity and provided a presentation that was eye-opening for me. I went into this thinking I knew what was at stake. I did not. So I'm going to share with you what I found out. First of all, the session covered elections and voting security, consumer protections, and all of that with a goal of a unified policy adoption across the US. More study is going to be needed before a position is drafted, and I continue to join this team with their work, and we'll share the position that results from those discussions with our league, and if it makes sense, with the state league when it's ready. What I heard on this particular day, though, under the heading of elections and voter security, the Oregon League explained that hacking an election no longer means hacking voting machines. That's old school. The larger threat today involves hacking people through disinformation campaigns that amplify bot messages, making them seem more popular and real through sheer numbers, by using deceptive media with voice cloning and image manipulation. Hackers can make it seem like politicians are saying pretty much anything, and just from a voice sample and an image. They use technology similar to that used in first-person digital gaming platforms, as well as artificial intelligence, allowing the troll or an AI bot to move and speak with the face of the voice of their target, convincing voters that they've heard and seen with their own eyes something that never actually happened. They demonstrated this during the session, and it was alarming to see how real these videos can seem. Now, the NSA and other security organizations know that this exists. They've taken steps to block it, but more needs to be done to stay ahead of it so that as we move into the next election cycle and see more and more disinformation going out there, that the technology stays ahead and is able to combat it. The Oregon League has determined that content regulation is needed to do this, to criminalize the dissemination of the disinformation, to regulate tech companies and social media platforms, requiring them to keep up, as I said, with this technology and develop tools to identify these clones and other disinformation content. This is something that's being discussed in Google's situation right now. Very, very timely. And strengthen data privacy laws. Right now, you may not realize this, but many of us don't control our own data, both personal information about you as well as shopping, spending, and browsing data. They know what interests you and can extrapolate on that to determine what might trigger you to respond the way they want, and they can sell that information to a third party who can do the same thing with your data. When data privacy is violated, Users have limited legal remedies to hold companies accountable. We go in, we all see that privacy message pop up on our screen, and you click through it because you just want to get to the information that is on the website that you're trying to get to. You don't read it because they all say the same thing. We have a privacy policy. If you want to read it, go here. But we can still be held to the agreement in that policy that we clicked through because that is as good as signing it. And that allows the owners of the site to do whatever they wish with your data. So the Oregon League proposes an improvement to consumer data protection. So we've already covered what can be done with bots. We've covered what can be done with your data. This is all forms of hacking the voters. Finally, we come to policy fragmentation, because you need a policy in place to protect us from being victimized in this way, and to ensure that the good information, the true information, gets out there and isn't buried in the disinformation. Our US privacy policy is not uniform. Many of you may know that the European Union has a privacy policy in place that's pretty stringent, but the US has not caught up with them. The issues I've discussed tonight require privacy laws that are standardized across state lines, providing clear and enforceable laws to protect against voter tampering and personal data violations. And better yet, the US could partner with other nations in order to ensure that our rights and our data is protected no matter where we go on the internet, that we are not being fooled, that we aren't being tampered with. Between now and May 2021, the Privacy and Cybersecurity Collaborative Consensus Building Group, it's a big mouthful, we'll come up with a better name, will put together a position on which the League of Women Voters of Oregon will vote, because they're the originators of this program. Assuming it passes, other state and regional leagues will be asked to join the coalition and will ask for national concurrence at the 2022 convention. So as I said, I continue to attend these meetings, and I will keep everyone up to date as more information comes. Thank you very much. I pass this along to Anne. Anne Kril is up next and will tell us about civics education. Anne, you're on mute.
Sorry. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see everyone. So I was a part of the convention this year. And as we were talking, I just want to preface this with, it was a long week, but we had a chance to listen to and be a part of a lot more sessions virtually than we would have been if we had been face to face. There were some downsides to that, but one of them being there was no way to really pursue subjects that we were gaining information on actively with members in person, because that we were just alone in our own homes. But anyway, the one that really grabbed me was the Harvard case study. I learned about an innovative approach to teaching US history, democracy, and civics using the Harvard case study method. The program was developed by David Moss, professor at the Harvard Business School. LWVUS has started a pilot program for high school teachers through local league chapters around the country. Our own league offered this opportunity to Tom Bryson, a high school teacher of US history and civics for juniors and seniors in Schuylerville. He applied and was accepted. He was supposed to go to Harvard and sit in classes there, but COVID intervened and he was obliged to take the course at home virtually. Essentially, the case study approach makes students imagine they are the legislators, the politicians, leaders, or citizens during the time of the history that they are studying, during that time when it happened. They each take a stand, debate the issues with each other, trying to understand how people would be affected by the decisions they are making, virtually, of course. They think about, if I were in that place as that voter or that labor leader or that congressperson, what decision would I have made? This method hones decision-making skills, paying attention to one case, one specific episode in history at a time. It also fosters citizens who know and understand the history of their land. I have a letter here from Tom Bryson. Thanks to the League of Women Voters of Saratoga County, I had the opportunity this summer to partake in a seminar offered by the Harvard Business School to attend their case study management program in August of 2020. This workshop has afforded me the opportunity to access and teach several of the Harvard Business School case studies so far this year to my senior participation in government class. One of those lessons was on the development of the secret ballot in California. Another one was on James Madison and the federal negative. The class, which is made up of a heterogeneous mix of students, has so far enjoyed this method of learning. Instead of a simple yes or no or right or wrong activity, students enjoy the open-ended questions and discussions that are a natural product of the lesson. Students also appreciate the discussion-based assessment instead of a standard multiple choice or essay exam. This style of discussion will help these seniors prepare for the real world beyond high school by having them realize that most situations are not simply black or white, and that they must be able to see that others may not agree with them. And now we're going on to Barb for her report.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Okay, so I'm going to report about the program that was actually adopted at the convention. And as Lori said to you, most of the program that the League works on and uses as a basis of action is included in impact on issues. There's an impact on issues at the federal level, and there's an impact on issues at the state level. Our own local positions, which are much less numerous, are in our on our webpage on About, and also in our League handbook, which is also on the website. So Monica, if you can go to the what was the proposed program, we'll skip down to what was actually, keep going. Okay, now let's. Okay, so we retained every single position in impact on issues. So those are big areas, representative government. And that includes things like opposition to the Electoral College. International relations. We have a lot of things about disarmament, about international cooperation. Then in natural resources, we have things on clean air, clean water, carbon taxes, nuclear energy, things like that. And then in social policy, we have issues about fair treatment of people. Essentially, that everybody should be treated fairly by government, that there should be government support for people who don't have as much, who are below the poverty level, people who of all different kinds of categories that you could think of in terms of inclusion. So that was adopted. The same things that we have had before. And we also adopted continuing the league-wide campaign for making democracy work, which includes voting rights, improving elections, campaign finance, money in politics, and redistricting. So that whole emphasis on fair maps and taking to court the question of whether partisan gerrymandering is correct, that the league has been very involved in. And certainly we've talked about making sure that the principles of the Help America Vote Act are implemented, and that we support new legislation that really continues the work of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So all those different kinds of things were adopted as something for us to be working on for the next 2 years. Then they also, besides that making democracy work, we have all these other issues that are incredibly important in our country right now. Addressing the issue of climate change. We'd love to see the Equal Rights Amendment be passed. So it has actually passed every state legislature, and the House of Representatives has already acted to extend the time limit that was placed on that to allow the amendment to become law. However, it is stuck in the Senate, as many things are. And then they're going to continue to work on healthcare. Gun safety is obviously a big issue right now. We've seen a real uptick in gun violence in this country. And as we all know, immigration continues to be a big problem. How to really address it and to adopt a comprehensive policy. The League does have a position on it, and it calls for having a really comprehensive policy, certainly for a route to citizenship for any people who are in the country illegally. So those are the sort of the status quo, in a way, things that we're working on that we need to continue to work on. And then they did recommend that we go to the convention floor for a vote on the concurrence on the electoral systems. Lori is going to talk to us about that later. But that's one of the concurrences. Was another concurrence that was adopted, and I'll get to that in just a minute. Can you run a page down a little? Or maybe we don't need to. I guess that's it. So you can come back to me, I guess. Monica?
Where do you want me to go next?
You can just come back and let me. Okay, so there were those two concurrences, and we are going to go to look at there were some motions that were not recommended by the national board. And that's the exciting thing that happens at convention, is that people go to caucuses and you talk about what you'd really like to get done. And that's, I think, in the area where having the virtual convention, it's really not as exciting, because usually what happens is you go to the caucus, you talk and you meet some people, you go and read to another room and you're talking and you're having a drink and blah, blah, blah. But it's kind of much more personal and involving thing. I think you feel a bit more remote in a virtual caucus. So, but I did go to the caucus on the transfer of public lands. And if you want to go to that link there, Monica, that the daily briefing.
You want the daily briefing through the 27th, or you want the public lands document?
I want to first go, I think, to the daily convention.
All right, you got it. Hold on. Flipping over. Here we go.
Okay. So the first one was this is a resolution, actually, to adopt the abolition of the Electoral College by a constitutional amendment as a league program item for the 2020-2022 biennium. So by a point of order, then the motion passed by 681 yay and 458 no votes. So it will be added to the program. But what was in some people's minds as we discussed that a bit was whether or not that preempted the support for the national popular vote. And I think that's why there was the compact for the national popular vote. So, but we want to, I think it was resolved, I'm pretty sure it was resolved, that work on both fronts should continue. Then the next one that was not a recommended item was this concurrence on the transfer of federal public lands. And this motion did pass by 855 yay and 207 nay votes. So more overwhelmingly supported by the delegates. Then there was this other, well, before we go to that, the motion from the league in Wisconsin and a whole bunch of other things for the electoral system's concurrence. And that did pass very overwhelmingly, only 79 nay votes. And Lori's going to report about that. So that's now if you want to go to the transfer of public lands. Okay, the point of this motion was to actually prevent the federal government from disposing of federal land and to prevent states from taking transfer of those lands and then selling them to private entities. So that was the big overriding thing behind it. And it was certainly something that Western states care about passionately, but we should too, because it's our land just as much as it is their land. It's federal land and we all own it. So there was a study by the League of Women Voters of New Mexico, which then gave information that was sent to all the delegates before the convention. So we had a chance to read this. And I did actually, since I attended the caucus that was about this, I did ask the one question that concerned me was one of the I don't think we can see it right here, Monica, but one of the conditions in order to evaluate whether a land could be sold is whether it meets the multiple use choices. And that's a concept in the federal land management thing. So here is the actual wording. That the league believes that federal public land should benefit all Americans and the land should remain under the jurisdiction of the federal government and be managed according to multiple use sustained yield policy. And they support improvements in management and regulation. So I was concerned, multiple use, I know from when I lived in Montana, often means commercial use. So that logging seems to be a big deal for multiple use sustained yield policy. But they did clarify that included in that is the classification of wilderness land, which I kind of like. So I voted for that too. So that, and this is the rest of the position, which is now our position and will be added to impact on issues. So that's all I wanted to say about that one. And I think we can go to Lori because she has been involved for a long time in the electoral systems concurrence.
Thanks, Barb. Yeah, so there's been a lot of people working on this concurrence for, geez, I mean, like 10 years. Our local league lobbied unsuccessfully at the 2019 state convention for the state league to support this concurrence as a non-recommended item. It is extremely gratifying that it was adopted at the national convention. Can I just say I was like doing a little happy dance. This position provides criteria for exploring and evaluating ballot measures or legislation at all levels of government that improve representation. I don't have the exact wording right in front of me right now, but the one thing I wanted to point, for example, right now there is legislation, the Fair Representation Act, which was introduced in the House in July 2019. And we could now support this because of this position, because it's flexible enough. It's very flexible so that you can just look at the criteria. Does it improve representation, et cetera, then state, local, national can decide if they should support it or not. And the big one that the gang that was working on this concurrence, like way before I ever got on board, that they're really looking to support is this Fair Representation Act. This bill would require that ranked choice voting, which is a system in which voters rank candidates in order of preference, be used for all elections for members of the House of Representatives. 2, that states entitled to 6 or more representatives establish districts such that 3 to 5 representatives are elected from each district. And 3rd, that states entitled to fewer than 6 representatives elect all representatives on an at-large basis. The bill also requires that congressional redistricting be conducted in accordance with a plan developed by a state-established independent commission, or if such a commission fails to enact a plan, a 3-judge panel from the U.S. District Court. So what this does is it expands the size, and so then you can use this ranked choice voting style of voting. And I mean, for me, when I read this and saw this, I was really excited about this. And we never had any kind of a position before that we could have been in support of a bill like this. So it was exciting to me. I think that's about all I should say about it, because there's this, it's, you know, you can go on the website and read more about that. But it was like a phew. What?
Lori, congratulations. That's what you fought for in at the state, right?
Yeah. So here's the full position that Monica put up. So, I mean, you can see how many leagues, look at all those leagues that worked together to, you know, I mean, years and years and years, people from across the country collaborated to come up with the language and, you know, listen to each other, and, you know, we're willing to change the language and, you know, just to get more people on board. I mean, in New York State, we don't have a lot of movement in this direction. I mean, New York City does have a form of ranked choice voting. That's, you know, about it that I know of. Maybe there are some other cities in New York that have it, but in other states, it's very much more being explored. So hopefully we will explore that more in our neck of the woods. All right. So does anybody, I guess maybe what time or how are we doing on time? 7:55. We're doing good. I think we're doing good. Everybody look okay? Any? We'll go on then. So we're passing the baton to Donna. Take it away, Donna.
Thank you, Lori, and good evening, everyone. This was my third national convention, first virtual one, and I had the same feelings about it that previous attendees have expressed. And overall, I would say it was a different experience, but still a good experience. I'm going to talk tonight about a session that I attended that was titled, How We Can Foster Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging in the League. It was presented by Krista Jones, who is a member of the League of Women Voters of Arlington. And Ms. Jones was talking about the need for the League to foster diversity, equity, inclusion. And one of the statements she made is leaders in the community, and I would certainly hope that members of the League of Women Voters are seen as community leaders, can be role models for diverse groups to make democracy work. But in order to do that, we have to look at our own history. Virginia Case, the LWV executive director who you heard from in the beginning, was quoted in an article, Facing Hard Truths About the League's Origin, that was written in August of 2018. Most of us know the League was founded in 1920 by Carrie Chapman Catt. And unfortunately, there were some racist overtones to our beginning. Miss Catt made the statement, white supremacy will be strengthened, not weakened, by women's suffrage. Now, apologists for Ms. Catt's statement said, well, that was political expediency. She was trying to get the 19th Amendment passed by enough states that it would be enacted. She had to get the southern states to sign on. She knew that these southern legislatures might have a problem with extending suffrage to women of color. That might be true, but women of color who had worked with Ms. Catt and the suffragists to get women the right to vote felt betrayed. And we have had a history as an organization of not being welcoming to women of color. There's a current focus at the national, state, and local level to create action plans and build relationships to increase diversity and inclusiveness in the League. Ms. Jones in her presentation pointed out, we have a lot of strengths. We have a great organizational brand and mission. We're used to doing critical programming to promote the policies that we would like to see enacted. And we have experienced members that know how to go about working and lobbying to get the programs and policies that they favor enacted. She also talked about the fact, and I think Barb alluded to this, that there are many, many different types of diversity. And while maybe race and ethnicity are the ones we most commonly think of, and I'm just going to mention a few because they list in about 20 different things, but gender, geography, age, sexuality, disability. Those are all different types of diversity that we need to be sure that we are thinking about as we move forward as a league. Ms. Jones talked about what is our brand in the community and how are we perceived? How do we go about recruiting members? And once we've recruited members, how do we retain them? How do we make sure that new members in the league feel a sense of belonging and a welcoming from us? So we need to look at who we serve, who's in leadership, and again, are we welcoming? And we need to, each of us, think about our own past interactions. Do we have unconscious biases? Do we form quick first impressions based on those biases? And what other organizations do we work with and partner with to achieve our objectives? What's our network? I want to just read the first two sentences of the National League's policy statement. It's kind of long, so I'm just going to do the first two. The League of Women Voters is an organization fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion in principle and in practice. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are central to the organization's current and future success in engaging all individuals, households, communities, and policymakers in creating a more perfect democracy. Now, we do have a local policy for our league, and it reads just about identical to the national policy, except it says the League of Women Voters of Saratoga County. We have a local committee that is exploring issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our league. Linda McKinney is the chair. And in February, this coming February, I think on the 17th, we do have, it looks like a meetup planned that will talk about what our league can do to foster and promote diversity, equity, and inclusion for everyone in our league. And I would now like to introduce Dr. Deborah Turner, the 20th president of the League of Women Voters. We have a video clip of Dr. Turner, which Lori mentioned at the beginning of our meeting. Dr. Turner has a very impressive CV. She holds an MD from the University of Iowa and a JD from Drake University. Dr. Turner had a 35-year career as a gynecological oncologist. She served on several medical missions to Tanzania, and she's also, I believe, currently the assistant medical director of Planned Parenthood of the North Central states. Monica, do we have the clip?
Give me a moment. I need to make sure I optimize it for video. Here we go.
So I turn to let you know, who am I? Well, I'm Deborah Ann Turner, known as Dr. T back here in the Heartland, speaking to you from America's Heartland, Omaha, Nebraska. Although I now call the Husker State my home, I am, simply put, just a corn-fed kid from Iowa and proud of it. Yes, I am one of those people who has asked, but where are you really from? Well, I am really from Iowa, born and raised. I am part of a vibrant and important demographic that many times is overlooked or not acknowledged. Unless you hail from a big city, unless you hail from a big city in the Midwest, there's very little understanding that people who look like me were born and lived there. I'm actually from Mason City, a small town with a population of just under 28,000. I grew up in a diverse community with friends of multiple ethnicities and religions. I received a very great founding education there in a place where most people don't realize that Black people exist and succeed. I point this out for two reasons. One, He reminds us as a league that we must strive to look beyond what is portrayed in the media or what we have been taught about our country into communities large and small for hidden diversity. And two, we must acknowledge that many leagues and communities like my hometown have unique and hidden diversity that we can tap into to make us a stronger organization. So now let's talk league. I've been an active league member for more than a decade. I realize my name and face may be new to some of you, and I hope that will change in the coming years because I plan to get to know you through a listening tour. I want to know the work you are doing, the challenges you're up against, the strategies that you are employing, and the success you are having. I want to know what you need from your national board and headquarters that will help you more effectively empower voters and defend democracy. Remember, League of Women Voter U.S. board members are simply local league members who elevate your voices at the national level. I see my role as president as a tremendous honor, an important opportunity, and a great responsibility. We stand today on a precipice in our country, and we can either fly or we can fall. The League has boundless potential to take flight to protect and change our democracy's future and build the power of women. There's power in our name and power in our numbers. We can and should shamelessly leverage it to achieve our goals. So let me briefly share with you some of my visions for the League. When I see voters suppressed through gerrymandering, voter ID restrictions, and massive voter roll purges, I get angry. It is our duty to not only work to eliminate voter suppression while also registering every eligible voter, but also to reinvigorate our electorate to want to vote. Protesting in the streets is essential, but protesting at the voting booth is key to real and meaningful change. Voting for president is important. But the president does not elect your school board, your city council, your mayor, your state house, or your governor, and in most jurisdictions, your police chief. You do. Those are the votes that will shape the future of this country, change our lives, and more importantly, those votes give you a voice in this democracy. So one of my visions is to make our election site, Vote 411, a common household name. It is the perfect nonpartisan tool to engage our voting family members, neighbors, and friends. Encourage your relatives, your children, your friends, and invite them to a Zoom meeting and show them how to use Vote for One, get them to register and look up information. Like Chris said earlier, the ability to vote is our most fundamental and powerful tool to shape our lives and our future. Without it, we don't stand much of a chance of changing anything. I was in Tanzania during the national election in 2015. In Tanzania, when you vote, you dip your finger in ink. The morning after the election, I noticed that at least 80% of the women waiting to see me had dipped fingers. In a country where travel to your polling site could take hours or days, I was stunned. I want to see the same in America, and the League can help us do that. Another area that I'm particularly excited about for our future is the League's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not just a catchphrase of the moment, it is our new trajectory, and it's becoming part of our DNA. By using an equity lens in everything we do, from budgeting to voter registration, we have the power to realize our goals. Without it, we will at best move sideways and at worst take a step back. None of us want that to happen. So we must live and breathe diversity, equity, and inclusion every day. It's okay to think of where we are now as DEI 101. We're building a foundation, getting to know more about ourselves and what we care about and what's within our power to change. Soon we will to graduate to 201. Some of you are already there. And I'm ready to work with all of you to move this work forward. What we've seen this past month is our call to action. The structural racism that has existed in this country since its founding is now on the front page of every newspaper. This is the wake-up call that America has long required and long ignored. Structural racism touches our lives in many ways, from education to healthcare to economics to policing. The Band-Aid has been ripped off. Now's the moment to heal the egregious wound and not rebind it and hope it will heal itself, out of sight and out of mind. It doesn't work that way. Trust me, I'm a doctor. It is our responsibility to take this work to the next level as allies in the civil rights community. Frankly, this is not our space to lead, but as leaders of our organization, we must lean into this moment and offer our unity and our support. That means being prepared to sit down and stay away if we are asked to do so. Humility and listening will serve us well. There's those who say the League is a democracy organization, not a social justice or civil rights organization. But how can you separate them? At the heart of the issues, democracy, social justice, and civil rights are intersectional, intertwined by the collective goal of advancing the right to vote. The League sees equal access at the ballot box as a way to reach the goals of social and racial justice. We as an organization acknowledge our own difficult history with racism and envision and embrace our future where DEI will become part of our DNA. Finally, I want to touch on one of the last elephants in the room, intergenerational conversation. Our work will not be complete or successful if we can't come together across generations. As League leaders, we must respect each other for who we are, from whence we came. The League is a place where young members and older members can learn from one another and actually change things by using skills and energy from all generations. I am easily considered an older member, but most of my dearest friends, both at work and in the League and colleagues, are decades younger than me. I said decades, not centuries. New ideas are what will make us grow, and this is what comes from working across generations. Leadership is not tied to an age bracket. It is tied only to experience, willingness, and knowledge, qualities that are present in all generations. It is time to stop relegating younger members to menial positions and learn to graciously but wisely pass the baton when the time is appropriate. But in the same breath, I beg you, younger members, please don't throw out the older gray-haired members with the bathwater. There's a place for everybody in our League. And here I have to give a shout out to my son, Daniel, 28 in Oakland, and niece, Daniel, 34 in Chicago, both League members. And I'd like to thank all of the young members helping us build the future of an intergenerational enterprise. As many of you have heard me say, the League of Women Voters is my endorphin. I have never come away from a League encounter not feeling energized. I am ready and willing to work for you and with you. I am a team builder and a collaborator. I'm not much of a my way or the highway type of leader, and I ask for your help to make me the best president I can be. The theme for the Iowa League's 100th campaign was hard won, not done. We are not done. And with the commitment of this fantastic board, our exceptional staff, and each and every one of you, I am confident that we will embrace our second century and improve our world on behalf of voters everywhere.